It's payday, and before you blow your paycheck, let me tell you how to run a drug cartel. Now, whether you're deep in the corporate life or an aspiring entrepreneur, if you decide to make this pivot into criminal enterprise, you'll still deal with the same mundane problems of managing personnel, navigating government regulations, finding reliable suppliers, and dealing with competitors. For reference, we'll use Tom Wainwright's 2016 business and economics book, Narconomics, How to Run a Drug Cartel. In this book, Tom breaks down the business practices of large corporate entities and explains how cartels model their own companies after these corporations. Throughout each chapter, Tom explains the nuts and bolts of cartel business, from franchising to supply chains and even to the utilization of public relations, and then concludes with each chapter with an economist's perspective on how to derail these acts of organized crime. So let's get to it. Laced with 10 chapters, the book provides insight on the following components of cartel business: the supply chain, mergers and competition, human resources, PR and corporate social responsibility, offshoring, franchising, innovation, e-commerce, portfolio diversification, drug legalization. He concludes the book with an argument on why economists make better police officers for the war on drugs than the police themselves. Now, that argument deserves its own video, which I'll post later today, but for this one, I'm focused on making you the next Pablo Escobar. So let's look at a few of these chapters. In chapter 2 of the book, Competition versus Collusion, Tom speaks to why it's better for two rival cartels to collude with each other rather than compete, stating, "The point of collusion between firms, whether they are drug cartels or ordinary businesses, is to turn one big competitive market into a series of small monopolies. Imagine a country that is served by two telephone companies. If they both compete across the entire country, business will go to the firm that offers the better service at the lower price. The upshot is that neither firm is able to make much of a profit, but if the firms collude, agreeing, say, that one will cover the north of the country and the other will cover the south, each one runs its own little monopoly, charging higher prices for service. That is why collusion is usually banned. Of course, illegal companies don't need to worry too much about the antitrust rules, which is why collusion of some sort between rival gangs is more common than one might imagine." Tom goes on to state that collusion between gangs tends to drop the rate of violent crimes, as the boundaries set within business helps govern the gangs internally. Another example he uses is the use of police. When attempting to carry out a corporate takeover, cartels are like ordinary businesses in that they need to satisfy competition regulators that the deal should go ahead. The main regulators of the drug industries are the police. They're the ones whose job it is to stop the business and who can be persuaded with enough bribery or intimidation to allow it to go ahead. Again, the problem with this form of competition is it leads to more violence. An absurd pattern established itself in which shootouts would take place between two different sets of police patrolling cities like Juarez, where two separate competing cartels were fighting for borrowed territory. Each shot would claim that the police was in cahoots with one of the warring cartels, and both would often be proven correct. Tom's solution was interesting. The fewer border openings there were, the more violence we would see. By opening more border passings, each one would become less valuable and less worth fighting for. It could reduce the amount of fighting with little impact on the American illegal drugs market. However, don't tell that to the sitting president. Another component of cartel business you should consider is the use of public relations, i.e. the PR for your company. In chapter 4 of the book PR and the Madman of Sinaloa, Tom speaks to how drug traffickers are often portrayed in a romantic way that glosses over their crimes. A curious feature of the drug trafficking business is that the people at the top of the gang manage to enjoy a reputation that is better than that of most criminals. Their transformation in the popular imagination from seedy, brutal thugs to lovable rogues is one of the most dramatic public relations coups in the business world. Tom states they're able to do this with a range of campaigns. The traditional method is to hang a sheet or plastic banner from a highway bridge and alert local photographers before the authorities can cut the ad down. More commonly, they take the form of attack ads, bad-mouthing or issuing threats to rival gangs, in which case the messages are sometimes accompanied by hanging bodies, or messages that reassure citizens that the cartel is on their side. Engaged in drug trafficking, yes, but not in crimes such as extortion that affect ordinary people. Mexico's cartels have invested a lot of time and money in persuading journalists to tame their coverage. Persuasion takes the traditional form of silver or lead, meaning a bribe or a bullet, which the gangs use to get their way in other areas of public life. A longer-term strategy that cartels use to launder their reputation is to invest in the mysterious world of corporate social responsibility. Tom states, some high-rolling criminals have acquired a reputation for carrying out ostentatious acts of philanthropy. El Chapo, who liked to strut around the poshiest restaurants of Sinaloa, was known for the $1,000 tips he gave waiters. Pablo Escobar gave out Christmas presents to children of Medellin, built roller skating rinks, and even housing for the poor. La Familia Michoacana provides cheap loans to businesses and an informal dispute resolution service which no one tends to question. Many drug lords have paid for the construction of churches. How can governments sabotage the cartel's public relationships machine? Tom says the single most effective way to undermine these efforts is for the state to up its own game in the provision of basic public service. Secondly, he states governments should offer better protection to journalists, and the news organizations should agree among themselves to publish the same version of reports on particular sensitive subjects, giving them safety in numbers. Lastly, governments in wealthy countries should do a better job of educating the drug-buying public about how its money ends up being spent. This style of corporate juxtapositions followed by government and public solutions are all throughout the book. Tom comes full circle at the end of the book and presents a compelling argument on how the legalization of drugs can weaken the cartels in general. So if you're still interested in starting your own cartel to get ahead of your competition, give Narconomics, How to Run a Drug Cartel a read and prepare yourself for the challenges of growing and scaling your business. Like if you enjoyed this segment, share if it could benefit others, subscribe for more book-related content. Till then, stay in the book and stay out the way.